Vivek Ramaswamy exposes the hidden meaning on the $1 bill. Now, recently, Vivek went on to George Janko's podcast, and they had a conversation about all types of things. Now, Vivek is a Hindu. George Janko is a Christian. And they get on the conversation of God. This part of the conversation was very, very, very interesting. Let's jump in.
Patrick Bet-David said a quote that is very, very scary to me. Okay. He said, "I'm scared we're going to be the generation that loses God's favor." Mm-hmm. And why that scares me is because I grew up in this country where it was really outstanding to be standing with your God. And then it slowly started getting, maybe we shouldn't invite God into the schools and in the country. And then it started to go like, oh, you talk about God, you're weird. This is the true factor that I see with our history books in the Bible. If you lose respect for the Heavenly Father, then you start losing respect for your earthly father. Once you start losing respect for your earthly father, you have no respect for yourself. And when you have no respect for yourself, you start acting
He's cooking, ladies and gentlemen. He said, when you lose respect for your heavenly father, you lose respect for your earthly father, and then you lose respect for yourself. Shout out George Janko, man.
And when you have no respect for yourself, you start acting like a demon. And now I'm starting to realize that the people around me care so much more about what God doesn't want you to do, that how are we not going to end up in hell's fire? How? It's impossible. If I turn this light off, the room becomes dark. If you take God out of it, life ceases to exist. So how is it that we could go and openly talk about everything else they want to teach our children, but we bring up God and we're the outcast? If we don't stand up for our God in this country today, there will be no country tomorrow.
I believe that. I think our founders believe that. I mean, it's
so how do we bring God back into our country?
You take out your, does anybody have your wallet on you?
I do.
Have a dollar bill in there?
Let me see.
Let's see. It's a cashless society.
I thought this was going to become like a magic trick. Like he's like, let
me show you what they're doing with God.
More, but
yeah.
Actually, it's one of the things. Okay, let's get $1 bill. Let's see.
I don't have a $1 bill.
Let's see what
shows
you have.
Really well.
Let's see what you have.
I don't have a $1 bill. Shout out to George, man.
I have 20, I have 10.
Let's see.
Here's 100. You can keep it. Thanks for your time.
It's in the back of everyone. Thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody have a $1 bill? Actually, first of all, it's on the back of each of these, right? It's on the back of every one of our dollar bills. In God we trust.
Yeah, but who's God?
Right. Well, I think there's. So that's a good question to discuss.
Yeah,
I mean, the beauty of this country is it was founded on. So I'm Hindu. You're Christian.
But Hindus believe that God was even a Buddha, right?
The thing I was going to actually point out was on the back of the $1 bill is the seal of the United States. And people don't talk about this enough. It says, "In God we trust," one. And so it's sort of a play on words here, right? Because it's one as in for this is the $1 bill. Yeah. Right, it's $1. So it says one. But that one is located underneath "In God we trust." And then on the left-hand side here, you got some interesting things going on. Annuit coeptis. Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means it's sort of in the order of. Actually, you guys want to just look that up, right here. I want to get this right. I know the spirit of what it means, but since we're going deep on this, let's actually just talk about it now.
Hold on. So I didn't know. First of all, I did not know that that was a play on words. In God we trust, one God.
That's super interesting.
On the $1 bill.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. And it's interesting to hear Vivek co-sign everything George said.
Yeah.
And not just co-sign it, but say, I think that's what the founding fathers believed.
Novus Ordo Seclorum, Annuit coeptis. And then you look at the back of this.
That sounds like a spell.
It does.
Is this wizardly Waverly Place? What's going on?
So by the way, people are going to take that and they're going to run with, and the $1 bill has the all-seeing eye. And
well, he gets there.
Well, the reality is where he gets is not where you think he's going to get to.
Oh, yeah.
Which is classical Latin. It's on the back of our dollar bill, right? These guys, it is called the Great Seal of the United States. It says, "He favors our undertakings." Okay, that's what that means.
It's crazy that it says
he favors our undertakings because it related to actually.
Yeah, you're calling back to it.
What you were talking about with Patrick, what Patrick Bet-David was saying, the generation that God will disfavor. Well, at the start, it says, "In God we trust," one for the $1 bill, Annuit coeptis, which means he favors our undertakings. But the way it's translated in English today is providence has favored our undertakings. And then at the end of it, it says, at the bottom of it, it says this other thing in Latin, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is also in the back of the seal. And this actually just tells you even more extremely how our founding fathers were thinking about this. It means new order for the ages. So they were creating a new order for the ages.
So, New World Order. I don't think that's where this is going. By the way, why do these dudes have to be so fancy with the dead language of Latin? Right? It's all these you can just tell us what you really. Now you didn't cause all this controversy. You could have just told us what you really felt about the daggone meaning of America and all this stuff. They're using all this Latin, right? No, I'm saying Latin is fire. I agree with you, Jackson. I am just saying it sure has caused a lot of confusion because when they say New Order, they're meaning something totally different than when people say New World Order.
They're like, let's put it in Latin just in case some secret societies pop up around the year 2000. That can be a really good conspiracy theory.
So they were creating a new order for the ages, in whom divine providence trusts. Okay. In God we trust, they then put it in English, and then put it under here, it says one, standing for the $1 bill, but also the foundation around which we're built. There's a pyramid with a little bit of an eye. The top of the pyramid is like an eye looking over that pyramid. The pyramids of Egypt are actually very interesting because they were built by a society that thought of themselves as the origins, the progenitors of the greatest civilization of their time. And they thought that there was a certain holiness in what they were doing. Our founding fathers in 1776 thought of themselves in that same spirit of setting in motion this new order for the ages. But it was still one nation under God, guided by that divine sense of providence. And so we can debate, our founding fathers had the debate. I mean, you have several of our founding fathers, even Thomas Jefferson was not a traditional Christian. He was what he would have called of himself a deist, right? So somebody who believed in Christian principles, but who believed in the philosophy of the teachings of Christ, but did not believe in the individual miracles from the New Testament. And so he cut out from there in the New Testament the teachings of Christ, but minus the stories of the miracles, and created what you would call the Jefferson Bible today. It's in the Smithsonian. But regardless, all of our founding fathers, with maybe a couple of exceptions like Thomas Paine, who was an atheist, saw our nation as following from the divine providence of the sole higher power, and the sole higher being the one true God. Now, different religions will.
Do you find it interesting that, and I don't want to make this about politics, but based on where someone falls on the political spectrum, will absolutely impact their view of this? If you're speaking to someone that's on the more of the conservative side, like Vivek and George, they'll be like, yeah, of course. Like, clearly, many of our founding fathers had theology degrees. There was Supreme Court rulings that came down, using the language "America, Christian nation."
Yikes.
Right? And it's Supreme Court.
That's crazy.
And then you hear somebody on the other progressive end of the spectrum be like, no, we're a secular nation, and they wanted to keep God out of everything, and they don't want to. So it's wild how that comes down. And I think what it really comes down to is they wanted to keep the power of the church that was over them back in Britain.
Yeah.
And that overflow of the church running the government and the what is it? The kingdom? What is that called? Monarchy and that whole thing. They wanted to keep some degree of separation, but I don't think they were ever trying to take God out of society.
No, clearly not.
The way that we've came to now,
Interesting.
You have John Adams, who became a scholar. Actually, he was Christian, but he became a scholar of Hinduism in his time after he left the White House. But what they believed was, yes, we're one nation under God, but God has put us here still for an actual purpose in this civic realm, where even atheists who don't believe in God can still participate in that civic purpose. But the people who set it into motion still saw it as transpiring with the shadow of God behind them. And so it's interesting where, like, today you forget about that, but even if you just open your wallet and just take out a $1 bill, it's hiding right there in terms of the ideas that set the nation into motion. And I think we would do well to at least bring that back into the conversation instead of treating God as a four-letter word, as we've grown today.
Come on. That's good.
That's crazy.
That's good. Yeah. Shout out to Vivek for breaking that down. I've heard this stuff before, but again, you just hear such polar opposite views. And shout out for George for facilitating this conversation, because I think it's a very necessary conversation.
They're using his name in vain, and using the name in vain means it's useless. And there's a Bible verse I wanted to share with you. And I wanted to share with you so I could take the time to share it with people that are listening, for men with faith to build on this faith. It's the Valley of Blessings. And there was this king, and he had a beautiful land. And two other allies were coming together. Both allies that he was about to fight had greater armies than him. So on the right, bigger army than him. On the left, bigger army than him. They're coming to take his land. And so he goes to God and he goes, there's zero way of beating this. There's zero way of beating this. We don't have the resources. We don't have the manpower. We don't even have anything of what source to even come at them. We'd be wiped out in a second. And when I read this, I go, man, that's how I feel right now. I feel like I look at the media and I go, this is just so much bigger than me. I look at who's running for president and I see a man like you saying everybody else here is bought. I'm seeing the man that we want to believe in is about to be thrown in prison. I'm seeing a chokehold on every exit that we have to bring this.
Slight shout out to Trump. You
I
got
know.
that? Wow.
The man we want to be elected. That's crazy.
Country back on its feet.
George.
And then I read this and I go, okay, well, what did they do? What was their plan of attack? And the Lord said, it's not your battle no more. It's mine. So when you go there, put down your weapons. Don't even look at them as enemies. I want you to rejoice. I want you to pray. I want you to give thanks to me and let me know it's in my hands. So I go, okay, what happens next? And then I realize the two enemies that are coming at him in the story, they turn on each other. They fight each other. And then when one of them wins, they turn on each other then. And then when they got to where they needed to fight, the war was over. They already won without even raising a sword. They gave it to God. And right now, I'm not trying to run for president.
Yep.
I'm not trying to push anybody on my God. I'm just trying to say, if you want to get this country back on its feet, start respecting the God who
Yes.
created this country.
Amen. And I think that's part of the loss of self-respect actually comes from, I think, the loss of a belief in a God higher than yourself, right? Individual, family, nation, God.
If you can't humble yourself in front of God and you can't be humble
Nation above
yourself,
family.
then it's hard to have like self-confidence and be confident in who you are and be like, no, these are my choices and I stand on what I believe.
Sure.
You don't have humbleness. You just don't have that.
Totally.
Let's
All right.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that was dope. Shout out to George. Shout out to Vivek.
Is Vivek pretty like, he's pretty like, you know, I mean, he was running for president of the United States, so he's got to be pretty
in
Christian.
Iowa. Yeah. He's
pretty
very savvy.
Christian.
I think he's gonna come to Jesus at some point.
Yeah, he gives me that vibe for
I think
sure.
he's gonna come to Jesus at some point.
Yeah.
I hope. I think he is very smart and very objective, you know? And I think once someone, if he hasn't already been confronted with the resurrection, the apologetic side of Christianity, I think he will eventually get there.
Yeah.
I think I doubt that would have been my first choice. You know, Vivek.
That would have been your first choice.
Vivek and then DeSantis. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it's there's tie, you know?
Yeah.
Tie at times. But yeah, I really like Vivek. I think, and listen, I like anyone that's self-funded. I like anyone that's like, I ain't taking any of y'all money. You know, I think that's awesome. We see according to the Bible that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.